Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Misfits of Real Estate. You've got your two biggest misfits on stage with you right now, myself, Mark, and my co-host, Matt.
What's up,
And
everybody? So
we're
I want
ready
to
to,
ask, yeah,
yeah,
I
go
want to
ahead.
ask you, Mark. Sorry to jump down your throat, but what makes you a misfit?
Everything about me. I mean, if you know me and you've met me, yeah, I'm sure you think Mark is like this weird misfit, but in my own mind, what makes me a misfit is probably um, organized chaos. If I had to sum it up in two words, I feel like there's a lot of chaos, and it seems like in my life there's a lot of chaos, but really there's also a lot of organization. It's just a
Hmm.
very it's just a very strange form of organization. So that's what makes me a misfit.
um, yeah, when you originally named the show, I was like, oh, I love the Misfits because I'm actually a huge Misfits fan, like the band Misfits, because I'm like, grew up in high school as like one of the disillusioned youth. And I was drawn to extreme music like punk, metal, and hardcore. So I was like, this is kind of cool. And also, myself being, a misfit is like I was a floater in school. I really didn't have like a core of friends, like that sort of like I just kind of like floated around to like the hippies and the druggies and like the jock kids and stuff like that. And it really never like felt like I had a home with a friends group. And when I walked up to a certain group to be hey, what's up, guys? That they'd like look at me. They're like, yeah, we don't want to talk to you right now. Like you don't belong here. Because my big mistake was when my friend group, like my core friend group, was a grade ahead of me in elementary school and high school, and poor planning on my part as a kid who most kids can't plan like for a week ahead of time. So I'm not going to beat myself up too much on this, but when I graduated, like when they graduated high school, I was like basically like the friendless wonder. And so it was
Oh,
kind of forced me to be that sort of like, floater and not having like a core friend group and that sort of thing. So that's why I've always felt like a misfit. I think I've been able to turn it into an asset um, because I'm not a conformist, right? And I like to think like, all right, how can we shatter the mold? Like, why do we think this way? Kind of challenging authority and status quo. I think it's helped me in business as well as it has helped me in life too.
yeah. See, I would have pegged you as the class president.
Absolutely not.
No.
And this is the thing is that regardless of like whoever's listening to this, wherever you're at in life, if we have like some young people listening to this, full disclosure, I never won an award in my entire life until I think I was 39 years old when I won the Rochester Business Journal 40 under 40. And so I was like, I never won awards. I never was like, class president. I was never like, like I was just kind of like that sort of average, average person. And I don't think that you should be ashamed of that. I think that, and here's the thing, I wasn't average from my work ethic standpoint, but I was average from like a reward recipient standpoint and that sort of thing. So, and I never got to like, and up to this day, I've never appreciated it. The 40 under 40 award, I was nominated by other people, and I got it during COVID. So there was no like actual in-person ceremony. So it was like a virtual ceremony that I had to have my family buy virtual tickets for in order to see my thing on Zoom. So
Oh, well, it's a very prestigious award. So congratulations on getting that. That's awesome.
oh, absolutely, man. So speaking of awards, have you ever won awards? Have you been, or are you like an award, like, you're a competitive person. Are you like an award, like, seeker? Tell me about that.
No, I mean, my parents put us in competitive swimming since I was a baby, my sisters and I. So I was always in the age bracket where, they were just always a little bit better than me. And that was my core group. So I was always losing because they,
Mhm.
they were like a year older than me and they were just beating me. But I was still, I still got like third. My mom gave them to me recently, this whole bunch. She's like, here, take your swimming awards, all your ribbons and medals and stuff like that. If I did win anything, it was because they shoved me in events that nobody else would do, like the 500 free. They'd be like, all right, Mark can swim 500 meters, so he can do that one. They'd put me in like the IMs, the individual medleys, where you had to do all the different strokes. Very, very difficult. They'd put me in butterfly. They'd put me in backstroke. So I was never like the best, but I could do everything and I could get an award here or there.
Absolutely, man. So what's at the top of your mind with your business and real estate lately?
The top of mind is the development project that we're doing downtown. We're excited to be trucking along on that. We're just working with the subcontractors. Framers are coming back in to finish up the first floor. Third floor and second floor are pretty much done with all the, framing, electric, rough-in plumbing. So we're getting ready to get the drywallers over there.
Are you documenting this from like, photographing it, video, like, you're kind of like walkthroughs of it, like, hey, this is what we got going on over here. Like, have you been documenting this process? Because this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I tend to like delegate that to other people and then they don't do it. And then when it's all over, I'm like, you got photos of that, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I got like 3 photos, boss. And I'm like, yeah, I should have just, if you want something done, do it yourself kind of thing. So yeah, I need to get better at that. I've definitely been on the site a lot and I could easily just whip out my phone and do a quick video. So I'll do that for you and show you. I'll get it up on socials for you to see.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that that's the biggest regret that I have is that like a lot of I didn't take a lot of before and after pictures of projects that I did. And I mean, we're both in the content creation space in terms of our respective thought leadership platforms and putting value in education up. Putting value in education out there, and it's a pretty big deal. And I want to see more about that, like your journey going through that. I think that's going to help you with raising capital for future projects, documenting that experience, like the good, bad, and the ugly. I think would be extremely powerful. So, I mean, yeah, and the thing is that you can't delegate that to somebody else because like you're the personal brand, like there's no other markup to graph, right?
Right. It would just be nice if like I could get some supplemental support from my staff, and I'm trying to train them better to do that. Because they're on site more, they're interacting with the subcontractors. They're over there more. They should, part of my training is like, how to capture a nice image, like how to frame it, like how close should you be to your subject given your focal length. Because, you ask somebody to do something. Here's a great example. I asked one of my leasing agents to grab a photo of a house while he was there because he was going there. And I'm like, you can just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You're already going there. Grab a photo for me that I can use on the internet. And he comes back and the living room photo has a dude like leaned up against the couch, not wearing a shirt. And I'm just like, what is this photo, Dave? Like, I can't use this photo. It's like,
wait, what was the photo supposed to be used for?
I was going to use it for like a listing photo to list the property. Yeah.
So, yeah, my God.
I can't use that. Everybody's like, yeah, Dave just didn't want to do it for you. So he gave you really bad pictures. So you would never ask him again. It's like, well,
that's a good attitude. He's going to be replaced by the AI revolution if he doesn't get his act straight,
Yeah. Dave is no longer with us. He's a good person, but yeah, sometimes
rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. I made a meme. I made a meme out of that photo though. It's priceless. It really is.
Oh, dude, you should post that up. You should post that up. So
I'd have to like sticker out the guy's face probably.
Yeah. So what's been going on in my world is I've been experimenting with different different videography and different video content concepts, that sort of thing. So usually once or twice a year, I do some sort of like crazy zany like spoof, and I like put a lot of production into it in terms of like a story and that sort of thing. So I went into a music studio for the first time in my life and recorded a rap video.
Really?
Yes.
That's so cool. You saw Ben Shapiro has a rap video with the I forget the name of the rapper, McDonald and Ben Shapiro.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so it was like my first time doing that, my first time writing rap lyrics. And so, commercial real estate acronyms, like it turns into alphabet soup.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to like ideate around what type of content do that. So I was like, all right, do we do something like alphabet soup related, where there's like, there's like DSCR that floats up into into the soup and that sort of thing. I was like, damn, there's a lot of like this like rap music I listened to as a kid where they like these guys like say all these acronyms. I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. It's probably like some like ill shit, 187 on a MF and cop. Like, I'm like, oh, that's probably not very nice. So I just made a rap out of it, like using like acronyms like COC and DSCR and NOI and LOI and all that stuff. So stay tuned. But it's like it's very awful. But I'm going through the post-production process now with my videographers, and they're like, hey, like they're coming up with all these ideas to like make it like, really cool. But I was like, I want it to be like maybe too cool. Like we're trying really hard, but to convince people that we're trying really hard so that makes it funnier. So how do you do that? So yeah, that'll be forthcoming. So I was like, maybe I can write it, like do some sort of song once a year about commercial real estate and just kind of like drop as a content piece. Cause I'm like very techie with my content and educational about with the content. And I don't have a lot of humor or like entertainment associated with it. So I'm trying to be more funny about the esoteric topic of commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the world really needs it. The commercial real estate world really needs a little humor.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, there's like, one of the guys I follow, Andrew Cushman, fantastic operator with Vantage Point Acquisitions, and he does great content. But it's very, very like dry and that sort of thing. And I was like, geez, like what can we do to like sort of educate but entertain at the same time? So I'm trying to do some more experimenting with that. So we'll see how it is. It could be pure trash, but I'm putting it out anyways.
Mm-hmm. I see that Angel did join, but I can't see him. I could see him for a second and then he disappeared. So, there he is. Hey, how are you? Can you hear us?
Yes. How's it going?
Good. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry, my partners were a little, they got a little delayed, so I just jumped on without them.
Oh, that's fine. Welcome to the show.
It'll be easy. Yeah, Angel, it'll be easier anyways, because like it would have been, we've had 2 guests on before, but like 3 guests would have been like Mark and I were trying to negotiate like how to do that whole thing. So so this might be actually ideal.
Yeah,
no, perfect.
You can kick it off,
yeah.
man.
So Angel, I know you've been talking to Mark, like kind of tell me about your background, bio. I have my own show. I ask a question like, you were born, now you're here. What happened in between? Why don't you take us from there?
No, perfect. Well, yes. So I'm Angel Gonzalez. I'm with Keystone Private Capital. My background actually is kind of unique because now I'm in commercial real estate, but I actually started out my career right out of college, actually in banking. And so it was kind of one of those journeys where I had no idea what I was going to do after college. So I was kind of just trying to figure it out. Landed in banking, ended up actually kind of being very fortunate with my career where I actually happened to become a pretty young, higher level up executive in the banking world. And it was just kind of through that journey, I actually kind of was able to use a little bit of what I learned in college, which was I was the guy who rented my house to my roommates, right? And so it was kind of one of those situations where it's like I had no idea what that was going to lead to. But what it led to is the fact that between the banking principles that I learned and then that experience was I knew I wanted to understand the world of real estate. I just didn't know what that would look like. So I started buying up single family houses. I was one of those unfortunate or fortunate souls, whichever way you like to look at it, because I always believe you don't fail, you either learn. But during the '08 time period, I had quite a few homes in my portfolio that I took a beating like a lot of other people did during that time. And so it was kind of one of those realizations where I just had to kind of figure out, okay, what's my pivot point? I was then forced and fortunate again to become executive in the automotive space because they wanted someone with a financial background to basically become a director and then oversee dealerships and different things. So it was kind of a unique kind of transition because it was like first you learn banking, then you learn how to manage and be an executive fully, and then all of a sudden that led me to commercial real estate. So I feel like I've kind of had to hit all the little stepping stones to understand all of the cycles around it. But it's been quite a cool journey. Now as the managing partner of Keystone Private Capital, we really focus and spearhead the world of commercial real estate through industrial real estate, but we're also class agnostic from an opportunity standpoint. So it's definitely something where if the right opportunity presents itself, we'll jump on that. But we do believe that having our backbone and our bread and butter be industrial is kind of where it's at.
So why industrial?
Because so it's actually interesting because I came into the world of into commercial real estate through office actually. So a lot of people actually would transition from single family portfolio to multifamily. I had a non-conventional transition, so it was kind of one of those situations where I started in business, and as I was looking at, in office, and as I was looking at the office space, I saw that there were going to be some headwinds coming, and so I started kind of trying to figure out, okay, where is the best positioning if we really want a more stable asset, something that has a little bit longer staying power from a standpoint of leases. One of the things that I fell fully in love with is this triple net lease that a lot of people did not. In office, you talk about triple nets, but it's very rare. Most of the times is gross leases. But when you went into industrial, we were like, wait a minute, we got triple nets. I have leases from 5 to 20 years. That's not normal, is it? And so it was kind of one of those deals that we just wanted a more stable kind of product. And I happened to fall in love with also the clientele, right? Because when you do heavy office, one of the things you'll find is that I always felt like, especially in the bigger, larger office parks and stuff, like I had to be somebody else, man. I had to wear the suit and tie still like I was in the banking days. I had to be like, I quite frankly, that's just not who I am. I really like to just talk to normal people, be myself. And when you kind of head into the industrial side of things, people tend to be more real. I mean, I've met more people wearing jeans and different types of looks that I'm more familiar with because my wife and myself, we come from a very humble background of ranching and farming, and so it just kind of felt like more of a natural fit. And I think that the asset class as a whole is just have a good staying power. So
yeah, that's interesting you say that because I have a student that's in my program, and he's a blue collar guy. Dock builder, former merchant marine that spent days and weeks on oil tankers crossing the Atlantic and Pacific, and he was just like when he wanted to pick an asset class, like he just like zeroed in on small bay industrial because he wanted to like deal with small business owners and contractors and that sort of thing, and that's like where his passion lied and where he like felt that. And by the way, I own office, but I don't go into my properties with a suit and tie. Sometimes I don't want people to know I'm the owner either. So, but yeah, I just want to segue before I give the stage to Mark real quick because Mark and I are trying to manage this better in terms of like flipping back and forth between us because sometimes we don't know like when we're supposed to do it. So I just want to kind of give bring top of mind here because you mentioned office and you saw some headwinds going in there, and so I'm going to share my screen with you real quick and. Do you see this? U.S. Tech job cuts could bring more pain to office market. Job cuts through the tech industry are adding another layer of uncertainty for a U.S. office market already contending with record high vacancies. Since the start of the year, a roster of companies such as Microsoft, eBay, Google, Instagram, Salesforce, and Amazon have collectively passed out more than 24,000 pink slips in a bid to manage expenses and reallocate capital expenditure budgets. It comes as some tech firms say they are shifting their investment priorities to focus on artificial intelligence and changing the calculus and how they value office space, according to industry analysts. So what say you about that?
They're 100% right. I think that what I saw, at least when a few years back, was that you started seeing a couple of things, right? The first one, let's just talk about AI and let's just get to that part right away. I think that there are still many people that are trying to avoid AI, or they think that it's a big, bad, scary wolf. It's not. Let's just start with that. Like anything else, how you use it has a lot of applications, right? And who it is behind it all. You can do things for good or for bad. So with AI, we understood that a lot of people were going to become more efficient. It was going to provide basically other avenues. So either you were going to stay in the world that you were in, or you were going to shift gears. And when you talk about costs, the costs and expenses, and especially when you're talking about office, the expenses on office tend to be quite a bit higher than you would see in some of the other asset classes. So at the end of the day, it is absolutely correct that companies are shifting gears. They're going to more of a hybrid model since COVID has happened, or they're going to, and they found out the power of having people work from home too, right? Like it's kind of one of those situations where companies are like, hey, wait, I can pay the person, but I don't have to pay these additional expenses unnecessarily. Let's go ahead and take full advantage of that. And so I just think that there's a lot of reasons. Now, the one thing I will say, just to preface, is I do still think that the office asset class is a valuable asset class. It's not going away. It's just going to be thought about a lot differently. And so you have to be very, I think you have to be very nimble, and you have to be very holistic about the views when you own that asset class. But at the same hand, it's definitely something I think there's more to come when it comes to the office.
Yeah. I always think of Elon Musk's quote where somebody asked him, are you going to let your workers continue to work from home now that COVID is over? He's like, no, they can go not work for somebody else from home. Basically meaning like if you're at home, you're not working. And if you're not coming back to the office, go find another job. So I'm on that train.
Well, this is interesting. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that I think that there is a lot of employers that do feel that way. But I also will say, I'm actually, I think of one of my partners that works for a part of their call it the day job, is they work for a really large firm, and they truly believe in the spirit of being in the office. But they also, because of that, lost some seriously talented people. So there is kind of this conundrum that people are in, where it's like, hey, now that people have discovered the power of Zoom and Google Meets and all those things, and then it can work from the, from a beautiful view or a restaurant or wherever it is that they might feel comfortable at, it is definitely something that you have to kind of gauge whether the employee and the employer's needs, like where do they meet?
Right. I'm sure Elon has at least one remote worker somewhere, right? I don't think they're all in the office.
No.
So we got so from an AI perspective, we got three. There's two classes of AI perspectives. There's the doomers and the boomers, and it sounds like we got three boomers in the room here. And I, this is a little bit, I don't know. It's a little bit, I don't know what do you want to call it, cathartic or esoteric or anything like that. But I think I look at the AI right now as like sort of like the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, right? Not a lot of people know this, but before the Industrial Revolution, our economy was largely self-employed, in the Western world. Okay. We used the put out method. So there would be these companies, it would be like a shoemaking company, right? And they would deliver, let's say, these like the materials to make shoes to the households. And these people would make the shoes, and then they basically get paid by the unit using this put out method. When the factory was invented, people were scared of the Industrial Revolution. They're like, well, they're making these machines, they're going to replace everybody. Like, why are we, like this, people were very resistant to it. And there was a lot of this like talk about like being like workers being an appendage of the machine. And I think this is kind of the same kind of like fear, framework that we're seeing right now with artificial intelligence, in that, people are thinking like it's going to be replacing people's jobs. And that may very well happen, especially like in white collar jobs, I think might happen. But I think we have to use it as like, this can make us more productive, right? If we become more productive, then we're going to need more people anyways, but doing different things. I think just in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I actually doubled down on this panel right here because I went ahead and I think it was November. I partnered up with a couple of fellas, and now we own an AI company. And it was one of those situations where I would tell you, I was the guy who, if you would have asked me about a year and a half earlier if I would ever touch AI, the answer was absolutely no. But then one of my partners was using AI in the office for all different types of things. And as I started to realize the efficiencies of it, I started saying like, hey guys, we have got to find a way to lean in. And so Lord and behold, now we decided to get in the AI business too. So I can tell anyone is that just because you're scared or just because we don't understand something, yeah, that just means we have to do a little bit more digging, a little bit more legwork. And that's one of the reasons also why I love the commercial real estate space, is because it makes you have to lean in and dig in into different things to be creative, especially in times like we are in today.
Yeah. What is your AI company going to focus on?
We focus primarily on the marketing components of the AI. So I would say I primarily used it, and when we first built it out, it was really to kind of become more efficient on the standpoint of I had all these different places I had to go for my calendar, for my podcast stuff, for my contacts. I mean, it was, you name it, I had to do it. And then finally I was like, there's got to be a better way. Like, and so as I started digging into it, I ended up I don't want to get into a story and scare the audience too much here or anything, but I definitely at a unique mastermind event. I had a few cocktails, and next thing you know, my wife was like, "I'm going to bed," and I ended up talking to this guy that was very AI centric, who's now my partner, and it led into about 3 o'clock me showing back up in the room, and my wife's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I was with the guy, we were doing AI," and so long story short, though. It's kind of one of those things that we decided to start out with, okay, how do we become efficient as a business? And then it turned out to become like, how do we help other businesses? Because we started seeing that other people started asking about our product. And then now we kind of have spawned into now selling that product. So.
Yeah. The sky's the limit. What does your product do?
Our product essentially takes all the things that I was talking about from a standpoint of your business, and it sets AI on top of it. So when it comes to like how people are addressing me in emails, my AI can handle some of the low-hanging fruits to ensure that there is nothing being slipping through the cracks, especially if I'm away or at a meeting or sleeping or whatever it may be. Same thing when it comes to like just not only my calendar, my email, but my marketing components. Like, I'm not one of those guys who believes in hiring an assistant or VA just to do social media posts, but I would like them to at least review certain things, right? And so it's one of those situations where that's where we started seeing the power of it, where all of a sudden our content was going out in a deliverable way. We started seeing that we started getting more engagement. We were being very efficient with, like I said, all the time management and allocations, because we have a one-stop shop system. So it just made it a lot easier for us to be able to really enhance and maximize our day-to-day.
Yeah. I'm constantly trying to get the technology to be like my admin person. I end up fighting with it more than it helps me. So I'm excited for new solutions like yours to come to the marketplace where you can actually get something done with AI and not just struggle with it all day.
Trust me, I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So switching gears here, real estate wise, what geographic areas are you in from an industrial standpoint? What type of markets you're looking for, like looking in? What type of criteria you're looking for in terms of making heads or tails of what you like and what you don't like? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's a great question, I would say, because to me, that's everything about the industrial component. So why I love industrial, just to kind of bring it back a little bit, when I started realizing that the government and the players at B were talking about onshoring and reshoring and all these different things, I started wanting to understand, okay, what does all this mean, right? Like, what lies ahead? And so I started more research. And one of the things that when we think about industrial, we think about fluidity. And basically what I mean by that is I basically feel like I become a logistics guy. I'm trying to constantly understand, okay, where are the important corridors, right? Coming up from as we're bringing in more bringing back manufacturing more to the States, as we're making sure now that no longer you might just see one large facility for a company, but multiple facilities throughout the footprint of the US. I wanted to understand what is that behavior and what that meant. And so ultimately what we found out is that if we were to start and kind of peel back the onion a little bit and start understanding, okay, where are goods coming from today? Where are goods going to come from tomorrow? We decided that Mexico was going to be a very big player in the future of our world because that's where some of these plants are going. It started with actually, I kind of think about it when the auto manufacturers had chip shortages and all these items were sitting on ports, vehicles. I mean, it was costing millions just sitting there doing anything, and no one understood what to do at the time. And so that's where I just started to understand more of like, okay, if we know that things are coming back closer to home, especially over the next 10 years, because let's just be clear, the government is talking about the fact of nationalism in some aspects. Like we have got to make sure we protect our borders and understanding what it is if we are dependent on foreign entities, what that could look like, especially for our goods and services. And so as I kind of started digging more into that, I started looking at, okay, there are corridors that open up arteries into more parts of the US. So if you focus on certain ones that are coming up through like New Mexico up to Wyoming, if you start thinking about Texas and how the impact it has, talk about New Orleans. I mean, there's a lot of different areas. And so for us, we decided that the corridor coming through Mexico or the Sun Belt regions were going to be pretty important for us with regards to how we can position ourselves. And then we start really looking about traffic patterns, right? So one of the things that you'll know in multifamily and a lot of people is that there is some shortages in when it comes to where products are at, especially from a demand standpoint. Well, we started figuring out that there was a traffic. If we started understanding what the traffic of semis were, where exactly things were happening, we started identifying very key areas, some parts of Texas, some parts of Arizona, some parts of Colorado. And so we started to kind of identify those and we started watching that. So things that we look for, we want to make sure we're typically wanting to be somewhere north of that 50,000 square foot when it comes to a facility. We focus on anything from light manufacturing to heavy industrial. But one of the things that we like even better is if there's a way to have a light manufacturing facility attached to a yard. And the reason why is because storage is a problem, or if it's close enough to open space, we can create the yards in order for the overflow of goods to be sitting at. And so we just really started positioning ourselves there. Location is absolutely critical, how close you are to a highway, how easily can, and sounds crazy, people don't think about semis, right? They don't think about the fact that a semi driver has a easier way going left and right when it comes to turning radius, right? So we have to understand, okay, where are the turns happening? Where the highway position is at? Where exactly are you in regards to ports? And so we started really understanding that. That's why I said I went from, hey, I'm a class A or looking at just office to really now becoming, like I said, a logistics players, because all these factors matters. And then the last part where we really want to focus on is clear height, right? We want to make sure how easy is it for forklifts and different things to maneuver or storage and all these different things. And so we try to make sure we're north of 16 feet clear height, preferably in the 20s. And we want to make sure, like I said, that we're within certain proximities of highways and things like that.
So Mark's father's background's in trucking, actually. So, but I want to ask, how do you count how many left-hand turns there are? Like, what's it like? Explain that to me, because like, one thing is that if let's say a semi is going towards a facility, and it would be ideal for the facility to be on the left-hand side when they're turning off of a road, because everybody's seen, those like trailers pulling right, and it's always like it's always a disaster if there's not enough swing. So is that something that actually you take into consideration? If like, okay, because like taking a right-hand turn out is different than taking a right-hand turn in. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things now you can't make all your buying decisions based on the trucking community, unfortunately. But you do want to make sure you understand what the players are be. Like certain facilities, right? You're not dealing with as big as semis. You're dealing with more trucks or different things like that. So those ones we don't have to think about as much. But when we are thinking about when goods are coming in or out, a lot of times we actually had two facilities that we had worked on where we were like, hey, wait a minute, for these guys to get in and out, it's pretty much a nightmare. And so is there a way, instead of having it the way we were set up, if they're going to take a left, can we make it a through? So then that way they're just basically going, taking a left and then coming through the facility and coming out with another left. And so we started actually not only thinking about them and coming in, but what can we do with the actual facility or the gate systems, all these different things in place to make it easier and more fluidity. So in some ways, kind of think about it like a one-way road. There are times where one way is way more sense than having multiple traffic patterns. And that's how we kind of created it, where it's like, if we do not have an easy way of identifying initially how we could be helpful, then we start looking at the facility logistics itself and the things that we can kind of change, because we are repositioning a lot of these assets. So we kind of take that into the pro forma and kind of put that as part of the things that we're going to be doing right up front to make things easier.
Are you purchasing stuff vacant, or is it always going to have a tenant with it when you purchase it?
Great question. I would say when we right now, having vacant buildings, quite frankly, is still, and I don't care what asset class you're in, it's still a disaster in some ways. And the reason why is because for us, we still have to use lending partners, and our lending partners primarily do not like that vacancy. So we do look to be somewhere at least north of 50% occupancy if possible when we take on these projects. Now it is definitely something where the size also, it matters as well, because if it's a larger facility that's vacant, that becomes more problematic because you're going to need more time to fill that space, especially if you're going after national tenants, which tend to take up some of those. And a national tenant could be anywhere from about 3 to 9 months further out than you would just your local, mom and pop shop, or your entrepreneurs that may only need a certain bay and things like that. So we have to really think about it on the size of the facility. What exactly do we believe the facility can handle, and what's going to be the best use? But that is all the factors that we look at.
So you mentioned lending partners on vacant facilities and that sort of thing. So from a investor structure, like, do you raise money on a deal by deal basis, or do you have a fund within which you purchase assets? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we do it both ways. I would say, actually, it's interesting because we just closed in a different asset class about a week and a half ago. But it's definitely one of those things that we did both on that one, right? We syndicated and we came in with a fund for part of it. So there are times where it's going to be only our fund, our KPC fund, that we would use on certain projects. But if it's a project has more scale or scope, or we need more hands on deck kind of from an investor standpoint, then we might syndicate that and then try to basically figure out where the delta might be and then try to fill that with the fund.
So in terms of syndicated, so if it's larger, you might syndicate it. If it's smaller, you might be using fund proceeds for that acquisition. Why don't you clarify that when you syndicate, are you bringing on like a co-GP to help basically fill in the gap on that from an equity standpoint? Some people may be confused as to why you do that. So just clarify that more.
No problem. I think it depends on the product, on what you're trying to accomplish, right? So when you syndicate and we are trying to, like, let's say, take down something a little bit bigger, it is something where we might. I think on this one we had about 7 GPs in this one that we co-GP'd. So we partnered together. We all kind of took a slice of the pie, and then we executed the business plan. It's one of those situations where I would say that if whenever possible, like, I made the mistake in the beginning thinking that it all had to be my money, and in order to say I'm the owner. But the other component was in order to grow the business. And what I found out, and which has been a beautiful thing through some of the masterminds that we're part of and the people I've met in the industry, is the fact that if there's a way to partner and leverage multiple things, right? You're leveraging the relationships you have with other GPs. You're leveraging their investor networks. Now you also, in these situations, you're leveraging the lender. So now you're creating other relationships and enhancing your opportunity for future deals. Because like yesterday, I actually was in a meeting and basically got turned on to another lender who's going to make it even easier for me to get financed. And so as you continue to kind of look at how especially in the world as it's changing, and when things get a little bit more compressed when it comes to ease of loan or land development or all these different things, you have to be more creative, and you have to decide, okay, what's the best path forward? And sometimes it'd be a mixture of them all. And so you really just want to make sure that if you can continue to collaborate with others and really build on those relationships, man, they're going to take you a lot further, especially if you want to scale in a meaningful way.
Is 7 GPs, is that considered kind of like a lot? Would you say it's typically you'd have less, or
You
is
know,
that pretty common?
yeah, I would say that's a lot for us typically. I think on most of the other deals that we've co-GP'd and partnered on, we probably had about 3 to 4 would kind of be the max in regards to that. But it's definitely one of those situations, though, when I'm very fortunate now. I feel like, especially in 24, we've gotten to a place where we're going to be doing a lot of deals with our friends and and some of our really close relationships. So it's kind of one of those deals that we're all kind of wanting to win together. And so I think that's why we kind of are opening it up a little bit more, is because we kind of come to a place where we feel like there's enough juice that's worth the squeeze for all of us to win together. And so I think that's why we've kind of opened up with the idea of having a few more on board, as long as we know who's the main partners that are driving the business forward.
Yeah. And then you said you end up being the KP on the project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and one of the things for me, especially, is that now, and I'll tell anyone who's listening, if you are new to the space, feel free to jump on. If anyone lets you on a deal, so that you have the ability to basically cut to the front of the line, right, or basically condense the learning curve. But it's definitely one of those things that I think that there is a strategy in place as you continue to get to the point where you become the lead sponsor or the lead person on some of these deals. And sometimes, like on one deal, I'm not in that position, but on most of our deals, we definitely like to be the people that are driving it, who really understand the entire fluidity of the business, and really kind of basically spearheading it because of our experience.
Yeah. And then, so my $1 million question is always, how are you sourcing your deals? Everybody's struggling. What are you finding success with right now?
Well, I think that's a really loaded question in a good way. I would say this: sourcing deals is probably one of the most challenging things for anyone to do. But I will also say is because some people are really heavily dependent on one lane or one avenue to get their deals. I'm going to tell you right now, I've had a couple of people I've known that are strictly broker relations. I think to me, that's to a detriment. I'm one of those guys who I try to hit it on multiple fronts. I like to go directly to the ownership. So if I identify an area, I might be knocking on doors or trying to figure out if there's a way to me to send a letter, an email, like all the information for people that own the facilities that you may want or have an interest in. All that information is public. And so a lot of the times, especially like if you have access to CoStar, it tells you right there their name, phone number, who's the ownership. So sometimes I just pick up the phone and I start talking. So I source my own deals that way. And especially too, if you're not a licensed realtor, because I am not, I have partners that are, but I am not a licensed realtor. So I actually have like zero restrictions, right? I can just pick up the phone and just start talking to anybody. And then that's by design. I actually have partners that specifically did not want me to be licensed in any way, shape, or form, because they wanted to have that avenue open. Then back to the broker relations, you will need those, because I think those are absolutely critical, because there are people in your market that may be the players that once they understand that you're serious about what you're doing and how you're doing it, they might be able to find deals that are off market then at that point. But most of the time, to get off market deals from brokers, you're not going to get those unless you're established, or if you made some really good you've done some really good forging ahead with those relationships. And then the other thing I would tell you that I think it's a little bit of a well-kept secret at times is the fact that some people do not understand the use of some of the simple softwares that are out there. Craigslist, CoStar, all these different things. The reason the reason I mentioned Craigslist, just to throw it out there, is that there are times that people, or think about it from a standpoint of MLS, there are times where people do not know which platform to put their properties in to be most effective. Like sometimes I've seen it where you see a commercial real estate deal on an MLS, which is residential, and you're like, wait, what? It's because the real estate agent may not be well versed as to what's, they're new, or There's actually usually is a newer person or some kind of a glitch in some situations, but it is definitely something. What I would say, use the softwares. We actually have even gone a little bit further because of our AI and our software is that we've actually created a pivot table of all the areas that we have targeted and identified, and essentially it all feeds into all these different call it the GIS reports and co-stars and all these things feed into our system, and we're able to basically identify an area, and we can know all the properties, whether they're moving one way or the other. It's kind of like looking at the stock market for us. So we've kind of decided to take technology to even spare that even more.
Nice.
Now, speaking of platforms, right? This is just a funny story. There was a guy that is he's the same ship, dock builder guy. He leased up about half of 135,000 square foot industrial facility using Facebook Marketplace as a platform.
Yes.
Literally, which that used to be. And he's like, I have to go through probably 50 spam messages before I get one good lead. But, I took that thing from $0 in revenue to, like 120,000 in revenue in 5 months just by using Facebook Marketplace. And there's no broker is gonna do that, for instance. So do you guys do your leasing in-house, or do you list with a broker?
So it's funny that you say what you just said, because we normally now lease. So we've done it both ways, lease with a broker. But also it's kind of funny because we forced our brokers, if they're going to represent us, they can't just do it the old fashioned stale way. Part of the vetting process of the brokers, because you got to remember, as an audience, I just want to make sure you understand, the brokers work for you. Okay. I feel like sometimes people forget that, is that they think that, hey, the broker, and they're basically trying to show themselves to the broker. And I'm like, no, you got to flip that around. You got to ask them, why them? How are they differentiating your product versus the other guy? I had a broker who I was like, hey, are you going to be open to putting it on Marketplace, putting it on Craigslist, putting it up on the local newspaper, put it on whatever it is, right? And the bottom line is, one of the guys was like, no, we just put it on CoStar and whatever. And I'm just like, we're done. The reason why is because you got to go where people are at, meet them where they're at, right? If I'm an entrepreneur looking for a very small bay, I'm not trying to pay an additional fee for something where I want to pay maybe $500 a month for, right? I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out where I can get a deal. And so you have to understand your audience, like depending on the size and the scope of your project, do not be married to any one way of doing things. I think right now, one of the things that I'm grateful for is whenever markets conditions change, it forces people to do one of two things. You either adapt or you don't. And if you don't adapt, and one of the things I would say, you will no longer be in the space. But if you are adaptable, you're going to be creative, and you always are going to look for a path forward. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's what I would say to anyone. Do not be reliant only on the brokers either. I'm one of those guys. If it's my building and it's my responsibility, I have to make sure I lease it up in a responsible way. And again, I like to compress time. So if my broker is working on it, does not mean that I'm not going to turn around and I'm not going to do my part. If I'm at a local, shop and I'm talking to someone, or I see someone at Ace Hardware store and I see that they got drywall, or I might just strike up a conversation and find out what's going on. So just be creative is what I would say.
Excellent advice.
Yeah,
all right,
go ahead,
Mark.
Matt.
What's your cue, man? Like, is it like sliding away back like this? Is like that's my turn. That's my turn to come in. All right. Well, this is all great stuff, man. So let's talk about the state of capital raising. Are you currently doing a raise right now for your fund? Are you closed? Tell us about what you're seeing in the capital market space from a raise standpoint right now.
Well, we all got to look at ourselves in the mirror and be completely honest about the fact that we all know conditions have changed, right? There was a couple of moments ago and a couple of years back where I swear everybody and their mother had money to just deploy. It probably helps when the federal government is giving you money too, just FYI. But it's one of those situations where I would say that capital raising right now for us, we just closed on a deal, and that one was I would actually say, if I had to to give it a little bit of a rating, I probably would say on a scale from 1 to 10, it was probably a level 8 when it came to some of the difficulties. And what I mean by that is that because we were raising so much and because we had some bigger check writers, we had to deal with more red lines and more things that we had and concessions and things like that. And ultimately, those are things that we necessarily didn't have to do a couple years ago. I would tell you right now that capital raising is one of those things. Back to the creativity standpoint, I think that for those, there are plenty of people that are sitting on the sidelines that are like, hey, we don't know what's coming. But there are people that are sitting on the sidelines because they, quite frankly, haven't been presented for a reason to get off the sidelines.
Right.
And so I think that that's where capital raisers have to start thinking about, what is it going to take to get people off the sidelines that want to get off the sidelines. And one of the things I would tell you is that also means that you might have to be more creative in some of the things that you're looking at. When I was and I would tell you, there's a deal right now that I'm working on raising capital for. I'll just say we're trying to raise $5 million in a very small period of time. Well, I can tell you that because of the products that I was looking at last year, towards the end of the year, I was having a hard struggle just trying to raise $1 million in a moment where I'm like, wait, this was easy, like for my last deal. Where all of a sudden I found I shifted gears. We ended up looking at a product that was so unique to the market in a very unique part of the country. And we believe that we might now have what you call a competitive advantage with this product. I can't disclose it all because, quite frankly, there's a lot of NDAs that have been signed recently. But it's one of those situations where once I was able to start talking about this new product and why it was important and how the impact it was going to have with not only just from a housing standpoint, but what it could do for some of these local government and grants and things like that, we started having people that are calling. And I had more meetings over the last 2 weeks about people that want to deploy capital because of what they're excited about versus all last quarter. And so so I'm constantly saying that I think sometimes you just have to gauge what product are you selling, how exactly, or at least conveying the information clearly, and then exactly what it is that they're going to be getting the benefits of. Everyone is saying right now, you're going to get X amount IRR, you're going to get X amount of cash on cash. What does that really mean if 1 million people are saying the same thing? What I will say is start changing the messaging. Like, for example, one of the things that we talk about on our capital raisings now that we never used to talk about is partnerships. And the reason for partnering with us. Now, they're still LPs or investors, but now you're taking them on a journey with you. Like, hey, look, why we're taking this project on is because we are really trying to solve for X. And what we really are looking for is for partners that want to help us solve X. And so would you be open to investing and partnering with us so we can solve that problem? And I think when you start changing the messaging and stop focusing on the pitch decks and the IRRs and all that, and start focusing on the reality and the partnerships and the execution and what it can really do for someone, that's when you're going to see capital raising becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that's why I think that, I'm on the distribution list for a lot of capital raisers, and every email looks the same. It's like webinar this Thursday, that type of thing. And it's like, 11% COC and 18% target IRR and all this other stuff. And it's like, that's really right, because now it's like one of those things. If you're competing on price, which that's a competition on price, then it's just going to be race. It's just going to be a race to the bottom. But if you can't, figure out how to package the messaging in a way, because that's like, what I've done is, and I've raised on a lot of projects in terms of like what type of problem that project was solving for the community, because that's kind of part of my personal brand is on, what can we do to add value to the community to solve a problem, whether it's naturally occurring affordable housing, which is a huge issue in Western New York. And naturally occurring affordable housing is one of those things that's like, it's one of, the most treasured assets out there that needs capital attracted to it. Because the thing is that affordable housing, like LIHTC affordable housing, is incredibly expensive. And New York is like $555,000 an apartment unit. And it takes, 5 to 10 years for keys to get into a resident's hand. Whereas NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing, the project, is much less than that. So I think that's a really, really great, really, really great advice and insight, Angel.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I don't know if anybody has any last thoughts or last questions.
Hey, where can our listeners, viewers, find out more about you? You have a podcast, right?
Yes, I do. So if you want to find me on our podcast, it's called Taking a Leap into Commercial Real Estate Podcast. You can find me there, or you can look us up at KeystonePrivateCapital.com, when we're all on pretty much all the media platforms out there, especially the YouTube channel. But I will end on one thing, and I would just say, during this time, especially anyone that's doing commercial real estate, you're going to get presented with the opportunity to go to a lot of other masterminds or partner with people on different things and whatever it may be. And I just kind of go back to the old adage of it's about building relationships at the end of the day. A lot of people try to tend to go wide with their relationships. I really try to go deep with them because I feel like they allow for better outputs and results. And so I would just say, please really focus on your relationships with your investors and your potential partners, because it really will make an impact.
Yeah, that's great advice too. Go deep on the relationships that you have, for sure. Awesome. Well, we can wrap it up now. Thanks everybody for coming on the show, and we will see you next Thursday at 2:00.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me, man. Really appreciated the time.
Yeah, happy to have you on, Angel. We'll see you soon.